We are
Hi,
back
Angel. How
again
you
for
doing?
another week. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. We're back. We're back.
Yes, we are. I am just like all over the place today. How have you been?
Been doing all right. Yeah, little bit of turmoil here and there, but that's life.
Yes, that is life. I double booked myself today, so I'm just coming off of another podcast.
Wonderful. Gotta love being staying busy like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we are just now coming off of doing a group working together. How have you been doing since that closed? And I almost burnt my house down.
Not a whole lot as far as any disruption or anything. The mages we worked with were all fairly skilled, so they don't. I haven't experienced any upheavals or anything. But there's been I can see a slow build up to the result I was looking for.
Doing another one next month, so maybe just build up to it, I guess. I haven't decided what I want to do. I normally don't do them so close together, but I just really felt inspired to do it again.
Yeah, I have already offered to join that one.
I saw that. Yep, yep. Anybody wants to join, become a living god for them.
Magical friends with benefits.
Yep, yep.
Not entirely unsuggestive name.
That's not even the name that I came up with. It had that name before I took it over.
Okay, okay.
Because I took it
Well,
over 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I think.
yeah.
So, yeah.
I noticed there was quite a bit of learning that was done in that thread, that whole group working.
And that's
I
something I
especially liked
love.
the moneymaker shaker. That was
Mhm.
neat.
Yeah. I try to
I
sweet
think
talk
I
her
ended
into
up
coming on.
accidentally teaching a couple concepts too.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point of stuff like this, is to work together, to not have all that, like, conflict that we normally see. No gatekeeping, everybody just do it to their ability. It doesn't matter if you're brand freaking new or you've been doing it for 100 years. And if
Right,
you and if you've
right.
been doing it for 100 years, I want to know how you're still alive, and I want that information.
Well, there are accounts from mystics and mages across the world of people who have attained immortality, and usually there's some type of morality lesson built into the story or the working, which I think is probably a good thing, but I don't know. I don't know if I would want to reach that type of immortality. Physical immortality sounds ultimately like a curse.
Because you watch all your friends die and
Yeah,
all
I
your
mean,
loved
unless you
ones.
were capable of just distributing that immortality left and right to people that you cared about, everyone you ever know is gonna just be dust.
Yeah.
And then once you do everything, what do you do then?
Start over. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
And that,
That's something that, like, how do, like, the gods do that? But then they're on so many different planes, they probably keep pretty occupied.
that was a philosophical exercise that I was directed to do for theurgy. It was to try to classify for yourself where the gods exist at. And my model is that the gods are pillars of reality. So they both do and don't exist inside of reality. The question was whether or not deity lives in reality or outside of reality. And I think they're more outside of it than inside it.
Reality. I'm being a jerk, but if you think about it, like, I think everybody has a different definition for reality too, you know?
Well, okay, so I would define reality in this instance as this universe and any subsequent universes, parallel realities, so on and so forth. I think they exist outside of that for the most part. Because some part of them, according to my model, some part of them exists here regardless. They're the pillars of the universe.
Yeah.
Fire exists because Hephaestus exists. He's the god
Yeah.
of fire and forges and craftsmanship and stuff like that. And so those things exist because he exists. And then the concepts of those things exist too, because fire has its own concepts, right? So you've got cleansing and purification and destruction, passion, anger. Things that are associated with fire also exist because Hephaestus, as the god of fire, exists. His existence gives fire to the universe. That's the model that I operate on. As a polytheist and as a sorcerer, those are the models that I use. And then it breaks down further to explain spirits, your smaller order spirits, So you have the god of fire, he is fire and all of that. And because they live primarily outside of reality, then their essence creates smaller spirits that are caretakers of all of those elements and all the principles. So then you get angels and, well, what we call angels. There's nothing really else to call them, but what we call angels, and then what you call the fae, elementals, certain demons, so on and so forth. All to me, all of that is a direct branching off from each deity. All those spirits branch out now, until you have a workable hierarchical system.
It's so funny that you started talking about the minor ones, because we were talking about in the last podcast about how everybody always talks about the major, like the big names, we call them big names. But what about all the like minors that are out there? Like I always find that I learn more from like the nymphs with Artemis, for example, than I really do her. Now, granted, she's always going to step in,
Well, it was the belief of several ancient Greek philosophers that the gods themselves don't actually interact with people. They send daimons or spirits, if
Mhm.
you will, with their messages and with their instructions and so on and so forth. And the idea is that deity never actually directly lays a hand on your life because it's too much. They're too heavy-handed when it comes to mortals in our lives and stuff like that. So they actually send spirits that take care of the things that you ask them for or the things that they want to teach you. That was the idea. To a degree, I buy into that, but I also believe that every now and then the gods show up themselves.
We definitely have the gods themselves interfering a lot.
Yeah. And then smaller order spirits are wonderful beings to have as allies because they cause more trouble than gods do. It's the fae and the elementals that you accidentally made mad because you were down at the river and threw a coke, an empty coke can on the side of the river. They're going to cause you more trouble than the gods are.
Forget that you had yourself added to the unseemly court and try to figure out why every time you go out at night they come running up on you. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And the fae are labeled as smaller order spirits, but those are really powerful beings.
Yeah, and I think it's because, for me, they're very connected to this realm. Even though they're unseen, they're still very much connected to here. And I think, like, when you think of the hierarchy, like, let's just say, like, with Greek mythology and Olympus, you have the gods up in Olympus. They're not as connected with a demigod or whoever would be down with us, you know? They're kind of
Right.
like, just like the power chord's longer, I don't know really how to explain what I'm seeing in my head, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's easier
Yeah,
for me
it's
to
it's a
interact.
hierarchy thing.
No. Yep.
Yeah, say, if you worked at McDonald's and the ice cream machine broke, you wouldn't call the CFO or the
No.
CEO
Yeah.
to have that fixed. You would get a hold of your manager, and so on and so forth. So there's like a hierarchical aspect to the deities themselves. They're a little harder to reach, but they're not unreachable by any means.
It definitely isn't, you can't talk to the god. That's such a, like, Christian belief, I think. Oh, that was a thought that I had when it comes to immortality. The Mormons believe that when you die, you get buried, right? And then when all the judgment and stuff happens, you get to go back into your body that's buried in the ground.
Well, that
So,
sounds awful.
doesn't it? I have lupus. I don't want this body again. If I'm going to be immortal and a god, can we have a different body? Especially after, like, are they zombies? Like, this is how, whenever they would talk about this in church, in my head, I would see us all walking around like zombies. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense because, like, the way I see them going to their own planets is we're gods. So why would we come and take our body? Like, I never understood that. Like,
So I think that's more metaphor than it is actual
no, they
like.
believe it's actual body. No, it's not
Look,
metaphor.
yeah, Yes, they do, but I believe it's more metaphorical than that. You know, you
Yeah,
go back to your body, but the idea is that you have survived. You've been given. You've gone for the quote unquote true belief. You've done all of these things. So when you go back to your body, it'll be pristine. There won't be anything wrong with it. You know what I mean? It's the idea that you get to continue the self, that yourself, the image of yourself and the self doesn't cease to exist. You don't become an ephemeral soul anymore.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure the idea is that, you know, you get back your old body, which is perfectly brand new at that point in time. It's wonderful. All the kinks have been worked out. Because otherwise the idea doesn't make any sense. If some guy that was a Mormon is dead and he's been dead for 150 years and you send him back to his body, all he's gonna have is a collection of bones, if that.
Crypt keeper.
Yeah, yeah. Then you got a bunch of crypt keepers wandering around. That doesn't sound like
What?
the ideas that they're trying to portray in that particular system.
That's 100% what I would have in my head, though, every time they would talk about it. And also, the women can't get to heaven without the guy, so God bless whoever would have been stuck with me. Actually,
Yeah,
it's
that
kind
that's an interesting concept. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses for
yeah,
that matter. They're a whole different breed. But I mean, that's what people think about us pagans. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And even worse, the pagans that practice sorcery. You know, that oh, we're weird. You know, my uncle thinks that witches kill cats and chickens and stuff like that. I'm like, well, that's not common practice. That's not really a thing.
No, I couldn't. I couldn't. I couldn't. Like, I want to have farm animals, but I would not be the one slaughtering my farm animals. I'll raise them, then somebody else can slaughter them, and then I'll cook them.
Well, a large purpose of the ancient sacrifice rituals was to give to the poor. You
Well,
know,
exactly. Yep.
ancient Egypt, ancient Greece,
Yep.
even more recent history, the old voodoos that that overlaid much of the South. But the purpose of those sacrifices of animals, part of it, is to be able to leave that on the altar, and then the poor come by and they eat it. That completes the circle, so to speak.
You use the feathers to make pillows. I'm just using, you use the
Right,
bones
right.
for
Everything goes
whatever.
to use.
Yeah, yeah. Make a nice bone broth or make a nice tossing bag or something like that. The food feeds the family. And it's an animal that you cared about. It's not like I go to the farm tomorrow and be like, that chicken right there, that's the one. It has to have some kind of meaning to it, too.
Right. Well, in ancient Egypt, for instance, when they slaughtered bulls to Osiris, which was a common practice, those bulls were pampered beings.
Hmm.
They lived better lives than 90% of the people that lived there. You know,
Yep.
they pampered them, they fed them constantly, they got petted and brushed and washed, and that's part of it too.
Yep. 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 What else? But like if people need to use stuff like that, like if a ritual calls for blood, you can always go to a butcher and ask for blood too.
You can. And
You know.
here's my problem with blood magic. You don't need blood to do any ritual or any spell. It's abjectly not a necessity. But the problem is that which is like a thing is that thing. And there is nothing more like you than your blood. And for me, that becomes really problematic because you can get some really weird complications in spells and rituals when you use blood. And I know a lot of people that advocate for it. Oh, it's safe, or it's this or that, or it's how you intend it. It's not that big a deal. But that creates complex ties in between you and everything else that's going on in the spell, especially if you're dealing with spirits. Giving blood to a sigil is not a light thing to do. You're essentially tying yourself to that being.
Yeah. And make sure it's a real being. Make sure it's not a trickster.
Yeah, well, and even
Yeah.
then, even if you have the real being, we don't have the capability to truly measure the machinations of these beings. You know what I mean? I conjure demons, I conjure angels, I work with all kinds of spirits. I do that. I do those things, and I understand a lot of them pretty well, but I don't know them. There's just too much distance in between us and the spirit to fully know them. We don't have a basis for comparison to deal with them on that scale. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. I personally don't like to use a lot of blood in any spells or rituals or anything like that. It's just too complex. It's too complicated. There's too many ties. And then if something goes wrong, it goes really wrong.
I would like to get somebody on that is the opposite, that uses blood very regularly in their, right, they're like a round table in their craft too, and see if there is, like, I would love to have like them do the same ritual. You do a ritual without blood, or me do it without blood, and they do it with blood, and then see the findings. I'm really curious now to see the difference, because like I can't poke myself. I can't do self-harm. So, like, if I do need blood, I will go to a butcher. That's why I said you could go to the butcher. But I wonder if there is a difference if you take a spell that calls for a blood offering or something like that, and you not do it, you substitute it with red wine or something like that. I wonder if there is a difference in the magic. Is there a difference between a spell using blood magic that's supposed to have blood magic and then emitting the blood magic?
Oh, well, yeah, there is a difference.
Yeah.
And you can tell. But the problem with doing tests in that manner is if you do a spell and I do a spell, even if it's the same spell, those manifestations will never, ever, ever
Yeah.
come close to being the same.
Yeah.
There's so many variables in my personal energy and my sphere of influence and your personal energy and sphere of influence that we couldn't corroborate any of it. But blood does put another level of oomph into magic. It does. I'm not totally against using it. I just very rarely use it. And you can tell the difference. Some manifestations are faster. Some spells are more powerful when you use blood, especially if it calls for your blood, not like the blood of something else. But it's not necessary. Ingredients and tools in magic are not necessary. You don't need them.
Fact, a lot of the spells that call for, we'll say Ionute, right? It's not literally calling for Ionute, it's calling for a herb. They were just calling it something else to make it
Right.
more edgy. Because a lot of herbs are called certain things, and that's what they're talking about, which I always thought was really cool. It's like, well, that makes it so less edgy, but it was also these witches, especially these women, didn't want people going through the cookbooks, for example, and stealing like their recipes and stuff. So they would, oh, excuse me, make it sound way worse than what it really was. And like it could be like parsley. I know that's not what I knew this, but you know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, and then you have to understand the old names for some of those
Yes.
herbs and stuff
Yep.
like that. It's quite possible that newt's eye is an
Mhm.
herb, and they just do that. But that's also part of the reason for the invention of the Theban script, the witch's script. It's a cipher. It's so that if somebody like the Inquisition came calling, they couldn't decipher what was going on in your Book of Shadows.
So do you want to know what Ionute really is? You ready? You're gonna laugh. It's mustard seed.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
So you have your hot dog with Ionute.
Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean they look like little newt size,
Yeah. Yeah.
but ingredients themselves are not necessary.
No.
You don't need ingredients. You don't need a wand. You don't need an opime. You don't need a staff, robes. Uh, it. But they do help if you're going into it and you're just getting started. Those objects really help
Yeah.
because they do add specific energies. If a spell calls for cinnamon, that spell is calling for a lot of fire, a lot of heat, that sort of thing. Those are the things that cinnamon brings to the table.
So this
If you know the
ginger.
energies, huh?
If you want to spice up a spell, throw some ginger in it. Like that
Oh yeah.
spices it up. Yep. Yep.
But the idea is that if you know what if you know the reasons that the spell calls for ingredients, what those energies are that those ingredients bring to the table, you can just insert those energies.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is a lot of people think that I can't do witchcraft because I have a highly religious family. Okay, that's fine. You know what? You don't need to do these. We're so bad at making these, and I'm really bad at this because you've seen some of my spells. They're absolutely gorgeous, but I'm also
Right,
doing it
right,
because I'm posting it to social media. So I'm setting it up so that it catches the attention. The big flame that almost burned down my house was completely accidental. That was just the energy in it. But it's set up like that because one, I am not in the broom closet. I'm a very open practitioner, very public practitioner. Two,
right.
I grow a lot of stuff. I have stuff to be able to do that. My family comes from a line of stuff, so it's not like I have to worry about being, disowned by my family. But if you're just starting out and you're living with people that just will not accept it, like for example, when I was married, my ex-husband absolutely had nothing to do with witchcraft. You don't even have to do it on this plane. You can make a astral temple and go do all your spell work there because that's still a part of you working magic, which is a part of all of our existence, and you'll still manifest. I have magical friends with benefits that they could not openly practice. That's why I never require a picture. And that's why the loophole or there's a safeguard of if you don't know it, the spirits know. Because there were people, like, and I was one of them, I couldn't do it. I had to go to my astral temple and do it. Or I had to write it on a piece of paper and just, excuse me, get rid of it that way or whatever. Like, it's the intention. It's the intention and the spell that makes it cast. What can cancel out your spell is your doubt in your own power.
Right. Well, and there's a number of factors going on here, but at the same time, it's these Instagram witches and stuff like that. They post these pictures, and they've got $10,000 worth of amethyst geodes all
Yeah.
over the place, and there's golden candlesticks and all this
Yeah.
other stuff. None of it is necessary, and it
No.
intimidates newcomers.
Yeah.
People who want to get into this go, oh, well, I don't have 50 different herbs at my disposal at any point in time to add to a nice copper bowl and then mix all this stuff around and do all of that. Like, I don't have the disposable income to put into that, et cetera, et cetera. And none of it's necessary. Astral temples are great. If you want to use an astral temple, you don't even need to use an astral temple. Magic is magic. It's about whether or not you can manipulate the energy to form fit your intent and then leverage the universe
Yeah.
to bend to your will. And that's all strength of mind, strength of emotion, and strength of body. Once you've lined those three things up to coincide with one another and act in accordance to your will, then you're in there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But there's a lot going on, you don't have to have any of those things to get a spell to manifest.
Yep. And Dollar Tree herbs work just as well as $50 herbs from a metaphysical shop. They're the same plant.
I would never, if I just wanted to use herbs or something like that, I'm not going down to Earthbound and buying the witch's kit, that's got the 20 different herbs in it
Yeah.
and there's half a gram of each herb in there. I'm gonna go to the grocery store.
Yep.
I'm gonna buy them semi-fresh or in a bottle, and it's gonna be cheaper and it's the same thing.
Yep.
But once again, you don't need it. You just need to know what energies are in those things.
You can buy the plant from Whole Foods, for example, because they have the best. I do recommend Whole Foods
Right.
herb plants for $5, and you'll have a plant. Keep it alive. Don't keep it alive. Dry it. Whatever. Now you're drying your own. Now, okay, so now you're watering a plant. You're feeding it with your energy. You're activating it at that point. You are caring for this plant. You are taking the time to dry your own herbs. You have now made the most powerful herbal blends and magic you could, and you spent $5 as opposed to buying it from
Right.
down the street. And now I'm speaking as somebody that sells herb blends and stuff like that too. But in all seriousness, I'm getting in my Unseen Witches Society, which is what I do for ladies on Facebook. I'm getting into a big thing of teaching them just how to use like the Walmart brand herbs and making all their blends from that, because I can do a big mason jar, which I have back there, not that anybody can see, but I could do a big mason jar for $10 and that will do a year's worth of rituals. I just do the ritual in one go, let it do its thing, and then there you go. But I also am kitchen witch, so every meal I cook is magic. And that's something else you can do too. If you cannot be open with your magic, cook with intention, make your meals with intention.
Right, and those spells are very powerful and highly underrated. But if you intend to do something like kitchen witchery, kitchen magic, cooking magic, stuff like that, I would say grow all your own herbs if you have
Yep,
the ability. If you can get some pots and stick them outside and get some rosemary and some thyme, some parsley, some
yep,
basil, and plant all that stuff and then keep it growing in your yard. When you need some, go out there with a pair of snips, snip, snip,
yep.
bring it on inside.
At the end of the season, harvest it and dry it. There you go.
Yeah, and that's a powerful thing that'll draw in spirits that are helpful too. If you're growing your own herbs with the intention of using them for, magic of some kind, you will draw to your plants the space spirits that take care of plants, elementals, any other number of different types of spirits that deal with plants,
Yeah.
devas, things like that. They'll be drawn to that, and then you can get to know them and make allies.
Yep. There's actually, I'll have to get into my blog post. There's actually a way to plant your herbs too to protect your house. Like you want your protection herbs growing close to your house too. And then you just
Right.
kind of plant them away. Like you want to grow stuff at your front door. You want to grow stuff at your back door. You want to do stuff by your windows and all that
The
stuff. And then you
corners of
want,
the house.
yeah, yeah. And then
That's a Masonic trick too. They teach that in masonry. You'll see people that have houses like that. It's pretty noticeable to know when somebody plants things like that around your house. You'll see a lot of cedars. Cedar is really super protective. It's cleansing. You'll see people that have cedar, rosemary,
yeah,
sage, basic protection herbs and stuff like that
yeah,
that grow around the outside. And there's always a pattern to it. Two by
yep,
the front door, one on each corner, underneath every window, two by the back door.
yep, yep.
Food dogs are great for that too, gargoyles. But
Well,
just putting a gargoyle out in your yard is not going to do the job. Like you have to consecrate that gargoyle.
I have a whole
Yeah.
fae, and they're no longer in the house, by the way. They finally did go back out. I have the whole fae out. Yeah, they're probably gonna have to come back in because it's getting cold. But yeah, they're outside again where they're supposed to be, and there's so much less chaos in the house right now. We got other issues. It's not the fae
Well, your
anymore.
phone keeps disappearing. I can't help but think you keep forgetting to leave out the milk.
Yeah, I lose my phone, my spoons. I know people know, well, because you can always contact me because I'm always on my computer.
Right.
My spoons go missing. Well, my house is just haunted in general too. We're having a lot of alien activity in Florida lately as well. And I'm not talking about like AI stuff, just like Florida's really, really active anyway. And it's been messing with our Wi-Fi. We've been losing power and Wi-Fi randomly lately.
I'm not an alien guy. I don't buy into the alien bit, which sounds odd for somebody who can sit here and talk about sorcery for days, man. But aliens are they're not in my purview. You know what I mean? I do not. Okay, so it's essentially mathematically impossible for the universe to not have some other life.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? We
Yeah,
find bacteria on meteorites all the time.
yeah,
And so it stands to reason that if there is other life, then there is possibly other intelligence. I don't deny that. However, for any civilization that is sufficiently advanced enough to either bridge the gigantic gaps in space, so this is a species that either travels extremely fast and lives a very long time, or they have access to some sort of wormhole technology, warp technology, something like that, which would imply that they're probably several thousand years, if not more, advanced than we are. And I listened to Michio Kaku talk about it one day. Michio Kaku is a famous physicist. He was one of the guys that helped develop M theory or string theory. He likens a species like that to being, if they showed up here on Earth, we would be like squirrels to them. And he says,
Purchase, but
yeah, he says, do you go out into the forest and talk to squirrels? He says, for a minute, you might. Like, you might be out wandering around in the forest and see a squirrel and be like, hey, little buddy, what's up? But then you get
yeah,
bored because the squirrel doesn't talk back
yeah.
and you move on. And I know that's anthropomorphizing an entirely separate species. But at the same time, it doesn't make good sense to me why aliens would be here hanging out, looking at us, or messing with whatever it is that people say they mess with here on this planet. I don't buy into it. I think if the species has gotten far enough to the point where they can move around in space like it's a flight, you know what I mean? Like it's a 2-hour flight from one state to another. I don't think they would be here diddling with us. It doesn't
Just
make
came
any
to squish the
logical sense to me.
cockroaches. They just want Earth. Never mind us. See, that's the thing about
Well, even then,
mankind.
that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
People talk about how they are here for our resources and stuff like that. That doesn't make any sense. Then they have to come to this planet and deal with the native local population and the animals and stuff. But the fact of the matter is that there is much better places to get resources than our planet.
Unless it's
There's
we're the
meteorites
resource.
made of gold in the,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Asteroids made of diamonds. There's an entire galaxy. I forget how far away. It's almost the size of the galaxy. It's a nebula. It's made completely of water. It's frozen water. It's just ice hanging out in this giant formation out there in space. Any resource that we have here on this planet exists in huge, infinite abundances more in space than it does here on this planet. I can't see like what
For
they want
us.
our real estate. Like our real estate isn't even very good if you compare us to other galaxies and stuff,
Yeah.
other planets. It just doesn't make good sense to me.
What was that Tom Cruise movie where they literally needed the human blood, but then they caught like a cold or something and like all the alien ships started dying? Is that World or the War of the
Yeah,
Worlds?
that was the remake of War
Yeah.
of the Worlds. It's an H.G. Wells novel,
Yeah.
and they came to Earth and they didn't account for the fact that there was possibly microorganisms here that could
Yeah.
do them,
Yeah,
and they
because they
all
were
ended up
mining
getting
us.
killed from
A
the common
cold.
cold.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so once again, to me, that's a plot hole. Because if you have an ultra advanced species that has come all the way across the freaking universe to come here and take over our planet and make war with us, you would think they know about microorganisms. Like
Wouldn't
they've
it be
built
the other way
spaceships.
around?
Do what?
Wouldn't it be the other way around? Like they would bring something that we don't know about and kill us with their common
Well, it would be
cold?
both.
Like you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it would be both.
Yeah.
They would more than likely have some type of microorganism that exists inside their bodies, just like we do. Most people have some version of the common cold in them at all times.
Yeah.
It's just that type of thing. Like we've got bacteria and all kinds of stuff in us. So my problem with that is that this super advanced alien race came from 100 million light years away, got here, and then forgot to account for microorganisms. Like they definitely know about microorganisms. They built freaking spaceships and lasers and
Like the whole point of that was they were using us, but then their source of energy killed them.
yeah, and
You
that's
know?
not even a good source of
I
energy.
know.
Like once again, they built spaceships that can
Uh,
travel, and their species is of a type that they can exist in these spaceships long enough to make it these huge, vast distances. And then they get here, like it doesn't make any sense to me. Like you developed all this tech that would allow you to travel across these distances that we can't even. A light year is so far. It's like 83 trillion miles or something. It's ridiculous. It's so far. that it goes beyond comprehension. These beings have figured out a way to travel across these distances in space mobiles with super advanced technology, and yet why would they need us or be here? Like, to me, that's just mind blowing. Doesn't make any sense.
Going on Tom Cruise too. I just found out recently that Scientology's headquarters here. I don't know how I went all my life not knowing that the headquarters is here. And I was watching a YouTube video, and you would think that all the people in my area are walking around indoctrinated into Scientology, the way people talk about it. I have only met one Scientologist in the wild, and that was John Travolta, and it was because he was doing like a fundraiser at Toys R Us. I've seen them because of them walking their uniforms, but I've never been approached or anything by them. So I just
Well,
think that was something
Scientologists
interesting.
don't proselytize.
Yeah,
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 they don't proselytize at all.
yeah,
And Scientology is more of a tax scheme
yeah,
than it is a religion.
yeah. Yeah, it's just
You know,
they don't mess with you. I am not a threat to them. I'm not a suppressive person. They can go live their lives however they want to. So I guess if you make yourself an enemy of them, it's a completely different story. But I've lived here all my life, except for the time that I was in Kodiak, and I go to Clearwater Beach all the time. I've accidentally gotten lost and ended up pulling into one of their retreats, and like they took my license plate number and they looked at my ID and stuff like that. But then again, I was on their private property. They're allowed to do it. They were super nice. Like they guided me right back out. Like I was doing a DoorDash or something and I got lost. And so I don't get it. Like, and then again, I don't want to like people that have been in it and have trauma. I don't want to minimize that either. I just don't understand why people on the outside are talking about like the whole area is indoctrinated when we're not.
well, I mean, to somebody like that, the statement you just made would have been
Mhm.
part of that indoctrination. You
Yeah,
know, they would go,
exactly.
well, that's just evidence that you've been, had.
Yeah,
The fact that people were nice to you, no, they weren't really nice to you. That's part of the indoctrination.
I hate that I have nothing to do. My money is still very safely in my checking account. Thank you.
Right, right. No, see, the thing about Scientology is more or less a tax write-off for
Yeah.
famous people. You know, they get to donate these gigantic amounts of money to the Church of Scientology, which then redistributes it back to its membership base. And it's all legal and all that good stuff. You know what I mean? It's just, it is what it is. It's no threat to any religion that I know of, except for people who are just downright, my religion is the only one and everything else is blasphemous.
The
I
other
wouldn't
rabbit
I
hole.
wouldn't be bothered by a Scientologist. I'd probably
No.
enjoy talking to them. They have some interesting views on the universe and whatnot. But then again, I probably like talking to a Pastafarian, which is a real recognized religion.
Dang.
Yeah, Pastafarian. Wow. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. We just got way off the topic there. It was just something I found out today because I was watching YouTube and it was like the creepiest city in America is Clearwater. And I was like, "Oh, really? I don't think it's creepy. I go to the beach and feel completely safe. Like I used to work in Clearwater. I didn't feel like I was in danger, you know?"
I've been to a lot of cities, and I can tell you right now that one doesn't even come close to the top on my creepy list.
No. I'm more scared of somebody pushing me onto the tracks in, like, Boston or something like that at the subway than going to my beach.
Oh, well, there's some little ghost towns in Nevada that are truly terrifying places, and there's nobody there. Nobody lives there. Nobody
No,
has
it's
for 150 years.
they're all on the mine systems, right?
Well, those were old mining towns and stuff like that. Some of them were boom towns where there was, travel in between places and whatnot. And the only thing that's left out there, those towns are, the
Creepy
the
buildings.
shells of the building,
Yeah.
and those places are creepy
Mhm.
because I think part of the creepiness is the lack. There's nothing there
Yeah.
besides some old decrepit buildings. Like that's a little sketchy. It brings to mind like death.
Yeah. And it could be. I mean, there's towns where the whatever's in the mine seeped up and killed the whole town. I have a bucket list of haunted places I want to go to. There's a bar
There's a
somewhere.
town in Pennsylvania that is on fire underneath the town.
I saw that.
The coal mine caught on fire and it's been burning forever and it'll keep burning for like I looked it
Yeah.
up one time. It'll keep burning for an insane amount of time.
Yeah, because it's all the coal. I mean, that's where you
Yeah.
coal is fire. I saw that, and like all the roads are all like warped from the heat, and there's like always smoke and stuff. Is that the
Yeah.
one they
You
won't let you
can't go
go
into the
to?
town.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the one they won't let you go into.
Which by the way, that town was also the basis for the Silent Hill movie.
Yeah. Yep, yep. There's a bar somewhere in Arizona, somewhere out there. Somebody will have to let me know. But I was watching it and it will spontaneously burn down. It's said to be on like a gate to hell or something like that. And it will just randomly catch on fire.
I've heard something like that. If you want to go to some really haunted places, Virginia City in Nevada, it's about 30 minutes, I guess, from Reno. It's up in the mountains. It's an old mining town. A lot of the buildings are original, so they're a couple hundred years old. The Queen's in there, the Queen's Mary, I think, and then there's a couple other places, old hospital and stuff that's there, and those places are haunted.
Mm-hmm.
Something to note about pagans and sorcerers. If you go trying to do haunted destinations and you're a fairly accomplished sorcerer or witch or magus, I use the term sorcerer. If you're a fairly accomplished sorcerer and you know defensive methods, you know your shielding and your warding and your protection spells and stuff like that, you go to do a haunted tour and you will ruin it for everybody there. Nothing will come out. They don't like pagans and they recognize you. Your aura has a specific configuration when you mess with magic.
The
And
drop.
they can
Drop it.
recognize you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they recognize you, they see you, and they hide from
Yeah. So you have to drop everything. I'm a medium, so I don't have that issue. Like I
you.
have to
Right,
keep my
right.
warding up. So
They see you and they want to talk to you
yeah,
because they
yeah.
recognize your ability to
Yeah.
communicate with them. But
Yeah.
anytime I've ever been on, I've heard this happening to other people. I've
Yeah.
seen it happen on multiple occasions where I went to a friend's house one time and they were playing with a Ouija board. And I know all the proper methods for using a Ouija board so that you don't screw yourself over.
Yeah.
So my buddy had called me and said, "Hey, will you show up to for this Ouija board? It's getting a little freaky." And I was like, "Okay, yeah." So, it took me 15 minutes to get to his house. I get to his house and they're doing the Ouija board. Everybody there is freaking out. And the planchette had started to move by itself while nobody was touching it. And they were getting really freaked out by that. And the minute I walked in his apartment, everything stopped. They couldn't get it to answer. They couldn't do anything. And then when they asked what was wrong, the board essentially said, the guy that walked in, we're not messing with that guy. We're going on.
Well, they want
Yeah.
you, like, when they try to scare you like that, they want you to keep the connection open, you know?
Well, they didn't want me there.
No, they didn't
They
want
were
you
like,
there because you know how to get rid of
this guy
them.
knows how to do exorcisms and banishments and even stuff I know how to do it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I've got that kind of thing memorized.
The one
And so for anybody out there who practices, fairly regularly, you will ruin ghost tours.
Yeah.
You won't have much fun if you go on them yourself, unless you're dealing with some really strong stuff that's got really big ego.
unless you're like me and you're a beacon. They are.
Yeah,
One
that's
thing
it.
I will say is if they are ghosts or people that are from like the Puritan religions or stuff like that, where when they die, they still have a fear of hell and demons and stuff like that. And they sense that you work with demonic energies, they will not go near you. That's
No.
the only time I get left alone is because they're scared, you
Yeah,
know?
they're
And
very, very puritanical point of view. They
yeah,
they think you're going to summon a demon to grab them up where they're
yeah,
at, and you
yeah,
you would think that because true ghosts are rare.
yeah,
You don't find true ghosts a lot. You find psychic impressions that are in the building. other types of spirits and stuff. But the ghost, like a ghost of a
That's
person, is a pretty rare occurrence.
what are they called? What is it actually called? It's not a ghost. It starts with an S. Why can't I not think of the word of it? My gosh, why can't I think of the word of it? Anyway, you're right. Usually, when you go to a haunted house, the walls are replaying stuff. So if there was a
Yeah,
murder in the house, the walls are replaying the murder. If the house is made of stone or cement or something like that, it's more likely to replay it. That's why when you go to like caves and stuff, you get really good replayings because the storm.
yeah. It's psychic impression.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, if somebody had this routine for most of their life, like you get the people that move into a house and they think the house is haunted with a ghost because at 6 p.m. every day they see
the
an
stairs.
apparition and they hear an apparition that walks down the stairs. The
Yep,
guy that lived there for 30 years probably walked down the stairs every day
yep,
at that same time to go get himself a cup of coffee or something.
yep.
And that was so his intent to do that every day was so strong, and his energy left impressions in
Bet it did that.
the material around him. Wood is
Yeah,
really good at holding those
yep,
energetic impressions. Stone, anything that's got crystal in it, stones,
yep,
crystals, stuff like that, they hold those patterns
yep.
so well. So that type of thing just keeps getting, like you said, it keeps getting replayed because it's all built into the house itself. But if you would think that these puritanical ghosts, if it's a real ghost and not a psychic impression, you would think they would have questioned something by now and tried to figure out why they haven't moved on instead of being worried about the guy that comes in that messes with demons.
Think that's why they're stuck here. Like the ones that actually get stuck here, because let's face it, you die, usually you're gone. Like there was a video of somebody that died on a helicopter, and you can see like the soul go up through the helicopter. That's really how it is. You're not sticking around. I think the real ghosts that get stuck here are the ones that are scared of hell. They think they did something so bad that they're afraid to cross over because they don't want to get hung on flesh hooks over the sea of fire. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
So they'd rather stay here, and that's what makes them get malicious because they get angry because they're stuck. Instead of letting go and seeing that all you're going to do is either reincarnate or you're going to go to whatever version of heaven you think it's going to be.
Right. Well,
I
and a
think
lot
that's
of
what
that,
it is.
is usually, in my experience with necromancy, when a person dies, they may be around for about 7 days. They might hang around for a little while. They might go hang around people that they knew. They might go to places that they particularly liked and stuff like that. And then they cross over and they
I'm
move
gonna
into
be at
whatever
Disney.
afterlife.
I'll be at Disney. I'll be haunting Disney World.
Yeah. Well, being a Hellenist myself, I'm gonna have a couple gold coins. I'll probably have them custom made
Yeah.
to be placed on my eyes
Mhm.
for the ferryman.
Yep.
But that's just my particular set of belief, and I know through talking to Hades that you're not, as somebody who practices sorcery, you're not bound to that. You're not bound to go to any particular afterlife. You can choose places where you would like to go, things you would like to see, so on and so forth. So much more becomes available when you're not constrained to physicality.
Yep. You decide you don't want to be human and reincarnate anymore. You jump back in, get recreated into something else.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you got to stand in line to,
Yeah.
reincarnate back as a person anyway. That's
Yeah.
and that's agreed upon by most of the reincarnation religion.
Well, yeah. And well, my vision. What was my vision? I told you about that. How they're literally
Yeah,
standing in line, waiting to cross over. Like it. That's what it is.
yeah. So people stand in line to come back to Earth to go experience physicality again. But that's not the only physicality that's available.
No.
And of course, if you look at like Hinduism, you don't get reincarnated as a dog because it's considered more of a punishment. Like you only get reincarnated as something like a dog or a cat or a bug if you were like a super dick, because then you've got the consciousness of a human soul trapped in a dog.
Can you
That's a
imagine?
miserable existence. Yeah, that's a miserable existence. As much as people would like to romanticize that, that's definitely not an existence that you want. Imagine remembering having hands vaguely and then not being able to use hands. Like, just that alone. If no, thank you.
So maybe that's why there's those really vicious dogs.
That sometimes dogs are just angry. Sometimes things just are. That's also something to note about doing sorcery. A lot of people get too deep. I had a buddy that I was giving advice to in the matter. He was trying to become like self-taught. And so, he would call me every now and then and be like, oh, this and this and this and this. And he started reaching the paranoia level, which I think most sorcerers encounter at some point in time to some degree. But it's not everything is magical. Some things are mundane. Some things are odds. Some things are just random chance. It's not always that way.
It's because the
You're cutting out on me here, Angel.
I'm so stupid and I burned my house down. That had nothing to do with the spiritual. It's because I set a fire right next to the curtain.
Right. That's consequence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not a salamander burning your house down.
No. No. Although I do love that Frozen had the salamander as the fire spirit in it.
Oh yeah, there's a little bit of truth in all of fiction. Aleister Crowley himself, I don't know if I said this last time, Aleister Crowley himself recommended that people read fiction. Fantasy, science fiction wasn't really a genre when Aleister Crowley was coming up with a lot of his stuff. But he recommended people read stories, fiction of all kinds, because artists are intuitive.
Yep.
And they pull secrets about the universe into their work on accident.
Everything
And
exists because of something. Something happened to create it. Like
Right. Or mini something.
Yeah. Yep.
As a polytheist, I don't think everything reduces down to a singular. I don't think that everything goes back to one source. I think that that's part of the point, is that there's multiple sources and multiple things happening. And that's why you have so many varying shades of nuance and, things happening out in the world. And Greek mythology actually pretty eloquently deals with a lot of that. Well, why does this suck? Well, it's because this happened.
Yeah.
Well, if that's so, then why is this happening? Well, because that got mixed up with this. Like Prometheus and Zeus having their pissing contests all the time. That's the source of literally all chaos in the world, is Prometheus and Zeus having a pissing contest with each other. Prometheus pulls a fast one on Zeus. Zeus pulls a fast one on Prometheus. Prometheus gets another fast one by him. And then Zeus says, okay, well, I will send Pandora to Earth. And we'll see how she deals with being Pandora. And then, of course, she opens the jar, and there you go. Now all chaos on the planet is released because a couple deities were having a pissing contest with each other. Say that again, Angel. I didn't hear you. I still can't quite hear you. You got technical difficulties here.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
The Trojan War starting because of an apple being thrown between the goddesses.
Oh, the golden apple.
Yep.
Man, that was something else. That is a truly interesting story. And the funniest part to me about that is Zeus. Like, Zeus had the ability to make a decision there, because it ends up being Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite arguing about who is the fairest and who deserves the golden apple. And they put it to a vote, and the vote comes up completely neutral. Right, like it's a three-way tie. So they go to Zeus, and they're like, Zeus, you're the king, you have to make a ruling. And Zeus goes, no, I'm not telling not a single one of these three immortal goddesses with vast, fathomless power that one is prettier than the rest of them. I'm not doing that. He said, but you know who will do it? This poor idiot prince that's been living on a mountain as a shepherd. that guy'll do it.
Cause pure chaos. Yep.
Well, that's like I said last time we were talking, all the myths about the deities, they're to give a certain amount of accessibility to the deity. It's I don't think that those are the things that happen. It really doesn't make sense for a being like any of them to be arguing over who's the prettiest or this or that, because they're all equally as perfect as one another. There's not really a standpoint of arguing there. And Epicurus said that the gods lived in such a state of perfect tranquility that nothing bothered them in any direction. Like you couldn't make them happy and you couldn't make them sad because they lived in a perfect state. They didn't have any wants or needs and they're completely tranquil. He said, so praying to the gods was useless because you can't convince them of anything. You can't entreaty them. But Epicurus was also a little bit cynical right there, if you ask me.
So just full of shenanigans.
Do what?
So the myths are just full of shenanigans, too.
Well, they are. And there's blinders in any myth, There's blinders and lessons and all kinds of stuff in there. It's like the myth of Isis, Osiris, and Set, Like, Set thinks it's hilarious to kill his brother and chop him up into little bitty pieces and scatter him across the globe. So his wife Isis has to go find all the pieces and pick them up and put them back together. And the only piece she can't find, I mean, you'll never guess the only piece that she can't find, right? It's just, are deities getting chopped up and spread across the planet? No, likely not. Well, what would even be getting chopped up? It doesn't even make sense.
It's an important part of the male's body.
Right. Well, I mean, if you examine that a little closely, it's talking about Set using chaos and destruction, which is his bent, to spread the power of Osiris across the land. He's used his function to create a greater thing. He's taken energy and seeded it out in the world.
I was just reading something and I was like, we're talk about that, and then I didn't write it down. Do you have any rituals or anything you're planning on doing for the new year? Or have you pretty much done it all by now?
Well, I follow the Athenian calendar, so Athenian New Year is not here.
Yeah.
But I've never been much of a New Year guy anyway. I don't do the resolutions or any of that. There's nothing to the New Year for me. I'm constantly doing magic anyway. If you took a look at my several books of shadows, you'd be flabbergasted by the amount of spells that I've done in the past few years. It's just mind-boggling. I worked my entire way through Damon Brand's Success Magic. It took over a year, and I was doing other stuff on top of that. I was doing 5 or 6 spells a day for years and years. So I'm constantly trying to do something with magic. I'm always testing limits and figuring out what's what or how I can do something else.
How something's going, I'm like, you know what? Whatever, I'm going to do something else. I was talking about in my other podcast, I teach a lot for this little Facebook group. And like when I teach my spells, I always say, this is my will. So it's done, right? But in my personal magic, it's usually I close it because I fucking said so. This is happening because I said so. And you wonder why it's so powerful. That's why right there. Because I'm very much a firm believer that we control our realities and we can manipulate our realities however we want them to be,
Right. Well, and the real power there is that you have aligned your will. It's not the thing that you're saying or any of that. It's because you have focused your will onto a destination or a target.
Yeah.
That's what makes any spell better than casting it differently. When you say so mote it be, or when you say be it so, or so be it, or amen, or whatever you're saying to end a spell, that is to signify, those are built into spells to signify that's the point in time where you absolutely need to line your will out with your thoughts and emotions and create a blade of your intent to send forth. And that's where most people go wrong. They say, so be it, but they're not actually pushing their willpower into it.
No. Yeah. And I think saying this is my will, so it's done, or because fucking said so. But as
Right.
soon as I started
What?
saying that, I'm
Yeah, well,
putting in.
whatever combination works for you. I've known people that said, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And that was the end of their spell. It's
Yeah.
very anticlimactic
Yeah.
to me.
The
But to
end.
them, that was how they did it. That was
Yeah.
what worked.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's just I feel like I'm just reasserting that this is being done because it's what I want. It's my will. I mean, dark magic is very selfish. We're doing it for our benefit, not can you maybe please possibly make sure that
Right.
this happens? No, it's like I need this to happen on this day at this time. It's going to happen because I said it's going to happen in my reality.
Right. And that's the whole purpose of the left-hand path. The entire
Mhm.
purpose of the left-hand path is to give to the self, to recognize that what most people think of as selfishness is doing for yourself.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do for yourself and consider yourself, and the ancient maxim that lies above the Oracle of Delphi, the Temple of
Yeah.
Delphi, is know thyself.
Yeah.
That is extreme wisdom, because you can break that down in so many ways. You can break that down, and it has deeper meaning every time you do. To know yourself, well, to truly know yourself, you've got to know a lot of your facets and your internals, your externals. It's a real project to know yourself. And the left-hand path says to know yourself and do for yourself. Because
100%.
if you won't, nobody will.
Exactly, exactly. And as you know, I am huge on helping others. I love teaching. I love running the Magical Friends with Benefits. I love doing healing. But at the same time, do I think people will help me as much as I help others? Probably not, you know? But I'm also not doing it because I expect it to come back. Because at the end of the day, I know that I'm going to have to manifest it for myself. But I find joy in doing healing or doing magic for others or teaching people how to do magic. I actually would rather teach them how to do it over doing it themselves,
Right, right.
Telling people, especially women, telling them that it's okay to be like, this is what I want. I want to be selfish. And it's okay to do that. A lot of women, at least in my experience, especially with teaching, they have a hard time saying that it's okay to be selfish. Like, we're just always thinking we have to do for others.
Well, it's a natural characteristic of your gender too. The evolution of our species has taught your gender to be caregiver.
Yeah.
Women are caregivers by design. They take care of children, they grow things, they do things like that. So it becomes harder for women to become selfish in a way, or to do for themselves.
Yeah.
And the thing that I find, you talk a lot about that. I have found that is true, but I have found that sometimes they go too far with it. Like, it's never did anything for yourself, didn't do for yourself, and then all of a sudden nothing else matters but the self.
Yeah.
And you've over polarized at that point. You've gone too far when you cease to care for others and only care for the self.
Yeah. Yeah. Then that's where the ego gets in the way. But one thing that I definitely notice is that if I am selfish and I'm doing something for myself, that makes me a better partner, that makes me a better girlfriend, that makes me a better mother to my son because I am putting myself first in that moment and my needs are being met or what I desire is being met. So now I can go and refill my partner's cup or I can refill my son, stuff like that.
Right. Right. Well, it's all about, I mean, if you don't ever do for the self, then it leaves a void in your emotional body. It leaves this gap that's really hard to, you'll find people trying to fill those gaps with all kinds of things. So you find people try to fill those gaps with drugs,
Yep.
alcohol, being extreme in some form or fashion, death-defying stunts,
Yep.
you know, carelessness. It manifests poorly, which is the reason I recommend everybody do some sort of shadow.
Yep. You need to do shadow work because 2023 to 2024, up until like August of last year, was hard. Time to go deal with that. Because
I've been on like 5-year shadow work journey.
have you?
Yeah, and it's well, I initiated into doing that. It was something I recognized the need to do, and then I enlisted
Uh-huh.
the help of Lilith. And that
Yeah.
if you want to do shadow work, he will teach you the lesson, and
Yep.
that not a single one of them will be comfortable.
Nope. But that's the point of shadow work. If you're not like digging deep and pulling that all through and pulling it out of you, you're not doing it right. Like the point is to face those inner demons of yourself. And I'm seeing a lot of trauma really, really coming up right now in my current relationship. And he's paying for past relationships since. And I'm like, I
Right.
feel, so I need to go face that so that he quits. I mean, he's patient. Thank God for him because he's so patient with me. But he definitely pays for a lot of stuff that's happened to me over the past years.
Yeah, and I myself have been there. Uh, and it's always a goal of mine not to make the other person suffer for the
Yep.
extreme traumas that I've
Yep.
experienced.
Yep.
I don't want to perpetuate those traumas, to seed more of that poison out into the world.
Yep.
But shadow work is hard, like
Yes.
the lessons that Lilith has taught me just in the past few months are just awful, awful, awful things to learn. She'll bring trauma up and then just rub your face in it until you're a blubbering mess. But I have her to, so that's part of it. I recognize the need to do that, and I've advanced. I've grown a lot from that. It's been a journey, and I'm going to continue going.
Yep. And I do want to put a disclaimer out there because shadow work can get really, really, really deep. When you're doing shadow work, especially facing intense trauma, make sure you have a therapist that you can talk to too. If you start getting into the spiral towards suicide and stuff like that, you don't have to just face that on your own. It is okay to ask for help. Also, it's super important to do your self-care too. You know,
Yeah, I personally I don't recommend solo practitioners do shadow work.
have somebody watch your back.
Yeah, if you're a practitioner and you're doing deep magical shadow work, I don't recommend you do that by yourself. Most of the time that's done in a group setting. Covens and stuff are fantastic to have if you wish to engage in shadow work. You want to be a part of a group because it helps to have people there that can pull you out, that know the techniques, that know how to manipulate the energies and stuff to pull you out if you get stuck in a really dark place.
Like, yeah, because I got into some really deep relationship, like past trauma shadow work, and it made me really suicidal. So one of my friends actually contacted my current boyfriend, and he actually reached out to me to pull me out of it. Because he knows how to talk to me, how to handle it, and stuff like that. But if I didn't have friends, who knows? I may not be here right now because I really tanked, like really spiraled. And
Right.
I have a therapist because I had eating disorder and like have lupus, and that's just mentally hard sometimes too. And it's just good. Like we're in a generation now that seeking mental health help is so normal. It's not taboo anymore. And I didn't even realize how deep I went because I got past the point of realizing to look for help, you know?
Right. Yeah, you want to have access to mental health,
Yeah.
a mental health practitioner of some kind if you're going to engage in. Now, see, I should make the distinction. There's a difference in between doing shadow work, like Jungian shadow work, like with a therapist, versus doing magical shadow work. When you put magic into this, it makes things so much more intense. It'll bring patterns that have been locked in your body out. It'll, uh, if you've ever studied any Taoism, you'll know that memory and trauma and other things of that nature are stored in muscles, organs, and stuff like that in your body. And you start doing magic with your shadow work, and it'll start releasing those from your muscles, your nervous system, your organ, your skin, and then you've got to deal with them. And the ultimate goal in shadow work is not necessarily to conquer your shadow, because you will have gone out of polarity by conquering your shadow. You want to be able to look your shadow full in the face, accept it for what it is, and give it a hug. And know that that is a piece of you, and it's okay that that's a piece of you. That's the true goal in deep shadow.
Yep,
Which,
yep.
if anybody is interested in doing deep shadow work like that, the dark aspect of Apollo is perfect for that, because Apollo has a really dark aspect to the plague side of Apollo.
Put me in the mind, Belial. He started it. Like, before he even said he considered working with me, he wanted me to do really, really deep shadow work. And I still haven't finished it yet. I haven't even started working with him yet.
It started with me with Astro,
Yeah.
and then moved to Hades. Hades really gave me a big push that direction. And Lilith always wants you to do stuff like that, but she didn't really push that on me or anything. She just kind of waited in the background until it was time for me to ask.
And I mean in a good way. Her and Azazel are probably the two most aggressive deities in my life when it comes to self-improvement, self-help, stuff like that.
I've gotten to the point where I don't like to ask Lilith for anything. She wants me to. She constantly wants me to ask her for stuff. But every time I ask her for something, she gives it to me. And that is almost more problematic than not getting the thing in the first place.
I mean, taking out my nose ring. I have my candle for some, just maintenance relationship magic, which is always something good to have, because no matter what, as two humans, you can't communicate with each other. So I'm just opening up roads of communication, stuff like that, because I've been having issues of feeling neglected yesterday. Or lately, not yesterday, but lately in general, because of past trauma, because I'm doing the shadow work. But behind that is Lilith. Lilith is helping with this relationship, I guess, self-care. But another thing too is it's important to recognize it. I know that I have issues when it comes to relationships. And even though I can't stop it all the time, and I still act the way I do, I see it, And
Right. That's important.
and when
That's very important.
yeah, and when I get too much, and I know that I get too much, I've never gotten in an argument when I get like this. He won't argue with me. He gets annoyed. I can feel it. He gets annoyed. I thank him for putting up with it and letting me get through that insecurity or whatever, But still, I don't like being like that, Always room to
Well,
do better.
that's your ultimate lesson there too. You don't like being like that, and you
Yeah.
have the self-awareness to recognize that you are acting in that way.
Yeah.
Then it becomes easier for you to commit to action.
Yeah.
Because you've got a lot of motivation there. Like, I don't like this. I want it to be different.
Yeah. 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 What else? Let's see. So we're doing another magical friends of benefits. This one just wrapped
Indeed.
up. Yeah.
I'm gonna go abstract on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have my ask for this one to be, I want the deepest connections with my deities, my whole pantheon, all of them. I want to dive head first into the bottomless pool. It's the thing that I do. I don't know why. I've always been this way, especially with sorcery, but I just want to dive right in. And I was thinking the other day, after getting all the work done that I had this past one, I think I'm going to have everybody try to connect me deeper into my pantheon.
Good challenge.
I'll
That'd
have
be
to
a really
find
good
a better
challenge.
way to articulate that,
Yeah.
but
If I
I
end up
know
with
what I'm looking for.
if I end up with like 30 matrons and patrons, I'm gonna be like, well, I'm not running it anymore. I know whose fault that is. No, but have you noticed? Like, I don't know what anybody's request is besides you're talking about it right now until the moment that I say, well, this is our matron, this is our patron. Oh, this deity stepped in too. Have you ever noticed that they always are exactly what we need?
Well, of
Like, it's
course, that's
crazy.
to me. There's no other way about it.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna operate something on the scale that you're operating it, and you're gonna call out for assistance, the ones who I mean, they don't view time like we view time. You know what I mean? Deities, for the most part, exist outside of time. Time doesn't pass for them, so it's kind of like they can see whatever it is they want to see whenever they want to see it. And then when you put that call out for help, one of them goes, "Oh, well, this and this is going to happen, so I should probably be there to help that along." And it's this weird circular paradoxical logic, but that's what it is. To me, there's no other way for it to happen. You're only going to get the ones that are meant to be there or wanted to be there because they knew what was going to go on anyway.
Yeah, well, they see the outcome anyway. Well, that's why it's like what Apollo's never showed up. Zazo will every once in a while. I've had him like 2 or 3 times total since I've been doing it. Always Hecate, always. She's always there.
Well, it's the goddess of magic.
Yeah,
What do
exactly.
you expect?
Yeah. And I could not figure out Apollo, but now that we finished it, it makes sense. Like almost every single person's request, he had part of what he does in it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then that's my patron. He's definitely. I'm bringing him with me wherever I go.
Yeah. Yeah, but for him to be doing like the whole group is weird because like my matron, like my actual matron, never shows up for those because what is she really gonna really do and within a group, unless they want to
Yeah,
do
she's more
like
of a solitary figure.
yeah, or like unless it's like a group of people that want to like save the forest or something like that. Like you know what I'm saying? Or somebody's setting up like a hunting lodge and they want success in their hunting lodge or something like that.
No,
So,
or a group of
yeah,
women that are supporting somebody that's pregnant.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Goddess of
Something like
child
that.
rearing and all that.
Yeah, yeah. If a girl I could see her like if somebody wants to do really well in nursing school, get into nursing school. I could see her stepping into that, but really, she doesn't really step, up. That's why my other one does. It's just she's always gonna be there. I get a Lilith a lot when there's a lot of women, and then when that happens, it's always a lot of injustice done to these women. Like it's like those particular ones where I've had her, there was a lot of baneful magic, a lot of revenge for like the things that we can't really talk about because of being able to post a lot of that type of stuff when I had Lilith.
Well,
I get
Lilith does not hesitate to resort to cursing somebody.
no, exactly. Exactly.
There's no hesitation there. She doesn't give it a second thought. She said, "Oh,
Yeah.
a wrong was done," and
Yeah.
and her thing is, it doesn't even need to be like a fixed moral wrong. Like if you
Yeah.
feel wronged, even if you haven't been wronged in any
Yeah.
way, she's like, "No, screw that.
Yeah,
Hit
exactly.
her with a
She's like,
hat."
I'm gonna handle it. I'm gonna handle it. And I also get Belial a lot when it's some of more of that like darker, deeper, baneful. Because I had one magical friends with benefits where it was like 3 that would not have been considered dark, and then like the other 15 were all some kind of revenge or cursed or like dealing with issues, having to get people out of their lives, stuff like that. And I'm like, and I don't know that. And when I'm like, this is who stepped up for it, I did have Lucifer step up once too, which was really interesting. And I purposely never state who it is because I know who they are. As soon as I say I'm doing a magical friends with benefits, it's because I'm being guided. So I already know who the matron and patrons and all that are going to be in it. And it's really interesting that when people sign up for it, they don't know who the matron and patrons are because if I said, oh, the patron's going to be Lucifer, we'll have 100 people signing up, you know?
Right, right, right.
So
Well,
that's
and
why,
it depends on what the people need for who's going to
yeah,
show up.
yeah, yeah.
Having worked with most of the 72 myself, I haven't, I can't, I don't think I can say that I've worked with all of the 72 of the Goetia. I've probably worked with most of the 72 angels too,
Yep.
most of the angels of the Shimham Faraj, some Babylonian demons and stuff. I've worked with a vast multitude of beings. Having worked with most of the 72, I think the darkest one that I can think of, like that just came off the darkest and just felt the darkest was Zapar. And it was just something about him is extra, extra dark.
This time too, I'm actually gonna use my universal circle that I paid $250 for that I never use. I never use it.
Oh, well, Angel, it's been quite some time here.
Yeah, sorry, it's been more. It's time to wrap it up. Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. I've got to attend to a couple other things myself.
Thank you for coming on again. I'll talk to you again soon. All right.
All right, Angel. Yes, have a nice one.
Thank you too.